In the heart of Lokoja's bustling market, a frail beggar sat under a towering baobab tree, his outstretched hand trembling as he whispered for spare coins. Most passed by without a second glance, but those who stopped to help had no idea of the price they'd pay. Halima, a generous tailor, dropped her last naira into his hand. He looked up, his hollow eyes locking onto hers. A faint, chilling smile spread across his face. Within days, Halima's thriving business collapsed. Her family fell ill, and her savings vanished. The beggar wasn't helpless. He was rich, richer than anyone could imagine, and their kindness fueled his dark fortune. Baba Ibuka was a permanent fixture under the baobab tree in Lokoja's market square. His tattered clothes, hunched posture, and soft cries for alms made him seem like just another victim of misfortune. The townsfolk pitied him. Many gave him food or coins, murmuring blessings as they passed. He rarely spoke, only muttering a faint "God bless you" as his bony fingers accepted their offerings, but those who gave often noticed something strange afterward. Sickness, financial ruin, and inexplicable bad luck seemed to follow their generosity. Rumors began to spread, but few took them seriously. What no one knew was that Baba Ibuka's life wasn't what it seemed. Each night he left the market, straightened his back, and walked to a hidden mansion in the forest. Inside, he shed his rags and performed rituals with the day's collections. The coins and food weren't just charity. They were fuel for a dark pact that drained the fortunes of others to feed his own wealth. The man they pitied wasn't a victim. He was their worst nightmare, living a life of unimaginable luxury at the cost of their suffering. Ibuka was born into poverty in a small fishing village along the Niger River in Kogi State. His father, Chukwudi, was a fisherman who spent most of his earnings on alcohol, leaving his family to fend for themselves. His mother, Amina, was the family's backbone, selling firewood at the market to provide what little food she could. Despite her efforts, hunger was a constant in Ibuka's life, gnawing at him day and night. At school, Ibuka was an easy target for bullies. His torn clothes, bare feet, and sunken cheeks made him stand out. The other children mocked him relentlessly. "Ibuka the hungry boy," they'd chant, laughing as he sat quietly, swallowing his humiliation. But he kept going to school, hoping education would one day lift him out of poverty. Tragedy struck when Amina fell ill during the rainy season. A persistent cough worsened, and the local herbalist diagnosed her with pneumonia. He prescribed a remedy, but it was expensive, far beyond what the family could afford. "Baba, please," Ibuka begged his father. "Go to the river. Sell fish. We need to save Mama." But Chukwudi, drunk as usual, waved him off. "Medicine won't change anything," he muttered. Desperate, Ibuka tried to fish himself, but with no net or proper tools, he caught only a few small fish, not nearly enough. Amina's condition worsened, and one night, as Ibuka sat by her side, she held his hand and whispered, "Promise me, my son, you'll never let this world break you." By morning, she was gone. Her death shattered Ibuka. Left with an indifferent father and no one to care for him, he turned to the streets, scavenging for food and begging in the village market. The bitterness inside him grew with every passing day, fueled by hunger, loss, and the cruelty of others. It was in this darkness that Ibuka made a vow. He would do whatever it took to escape the grip of poverty, even if it meant losing himself in the process. Ibuka's desperation grew after his mother's death. The streets of his village offered no solace, and each day of begging made his bitterness deepen. He often sat by the river, staring at the water, consumed by anger at the world that had taken everything from him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, an old man approached him. Dressed in flowing robes, the man seemed out of place in the poor village. His sharp eyes studied Ibuka as he spoke. You've suffered much, the man said. But there is a way to change your fortune. Ibuka's heart raced. What do you mean? He asked cautiously, though desperation colored his voice. The old man smiled faintly. Wealth is within your grasp, but it comes at a price. You must be willing to sacrifice. Ibuka, blinded by his anger and hunger, didn't hesitate. I'll do anything, he said. The man nodded. Meet me at the edge of the forest at dawn. That night, Ibuka barely slept, his mind racing with thoughts of what the man had promised. At first light, he made his way to the forest, clutching the stray dog the man had instructed him to bring. Under the canopy of trees, the man had prepared an altar adorned with candles and strange symbols. He began chanting in a language Ibuka didn't recognize, his voice echoing eerily. Place the offering, the man instructed, gesturing to the dog. Ibuka hesitated but eventually obeyed. As the ritual unfolded, the flames of the candles seemed to grow brighter, casting unsettling shadows around them. Finally, the man handed Ibuka a small pouch filled with gold coins. Your wealth will grow, but you must take from others to sustain it, the man warned. Collect charity, and their fortune becomes yours. This is the pact. Ibuka barely registered the warning. He only saw the gold in his hands, a symbol of the life he had craved. As he walked away from the forest, he felt both exhilaration and unease, though he quickly silenced the latter. The pact was sealed, and Ibuka's life would never be the same. With the gold from the pact, Ibuka left his village and arrived in Lokoja. The bustling city was a place where fortunes were made, and he wasted no time transforming his life. Using the wealth he gained from his first ritual, he purchased a mansion hidden deep in the hills, far from prying eyes. The mansion was a spectacle of luxury. Its marble floors gleamed in the sunlight. Gold-plated fixtures adorned the walls, and chandeliers hung from high ceilings. Surrounded by dense forest, it was both a fortress and a sanctuary, a stark contrast to the rags Ibuka wore during the day. But the heart of the mansion wasn't its opulent dining rooms or vast gardens. Beneath the grand structure was a secret chamber, accessible only through a concealed door. This chamber, dimly lit and filled with the scent of burning herbs, housed an altar at its center. Mirrors surrounded the altar, reflecting the flickering candlelight, creating an eerie glow. By day, Ibuka lived the life of a beggar. He returned to the streets of Lokoja, donning tattered clothes and covering himself in dirt. With a limp and a weak voice, he begged at the busiest corners of the city. "Help a poor man," he'd whisper, his hand outstretched. The townspeople pitied him, dropping coins or food into his hands. Some gave out of genuine kindness, others out of guilt. What they didn't know was that each act of charity carried a terrible cost. Each night, Ibuka returned to his mansion and retreated to the secret chamber. There, he performed rituals to convert the goodwill of others into his own fortune. He would place the coins and food on the altar, light the candles, and chant incantations in the ancient language the old man had taught him. The offerings burned without a trace, leaving behind a surge of energy that enriched Ibuka's life while draining the fortune of those who had helped him. The results were immediate. Businesses failed, families fell into poverty, and sickness spread among those who had shown him kindness. Meanwhile, Ibuka's wealth grew exponentially. Though his fortune swelled, a quiet darkness began to envelop him. He lived in luxury, but his mansion felt cold and empty, a prison built on the suffering of others. Even as he reveled in his riches, he couldn't shake the faint unease that came with each ritual, a reminder that his wealth came at a terrible price. Baba Ibuka's wealth grew steadily, fueled by the misfortunes of those who gave to him. Day after day, he sat under the baobab tree in Lokoja, his frail appearance masking the dark power that enriched him. Each coin, morsel of food, or gesture of kindness offered to him wasn't just a simple act of charity, it was a sacrifice, unknowingly given to sustain his pact. One of his earliest victims was Sani, a shoemaker whose generosity had earned him respect in the community. Sani had built his small workshop from scratch and was known for crafting sturdy, beautiful sandals. One day, he noticed Baba Ibuka sitting barefoot under the tree. Feeling a pang of compassion, Sani approached him with a pair of sandals. "These will protect your feet," Sani said, placing the shoes in Baba Ibuka's hands. Ibuka gave his usual faint smile and whispered, "God bless you." But days later, tragedy struck. Sani's workshop mysteriously caught fire, burning everything inside to ash. Left with no tools, materials, or money, Sani had no choice but to abandon his business. He fell into poverty, forced to beg on the same streets where he had once been a proud craftsman. Next came Fatima, a schoolteacher and mother of 3. She often passed Baba Ibuka on her way to work, but one morning she stopped. Seeing his frail frame and gaunt face, she felt compelled to help. "I don't have much," she said, offering him her lunch. "But you need this more than I do." Ibuka accepted the food with a nod. Fatima walked away, feeling a warmth from her act of kindness. But within a week, her family was plunged into crisis. Her husband, a factory worker, lost his job when the factory suddenly shut down. At the same time, her youngest child fell gravely ill. With no steady income and mounting medical bills, Fatima's family spiraled into despair. These weren't isolated incidents. Halima, the tailor, had given Baba Ibuka her last naira, only to see her thriving business collapse. A fisherman who handed Ibuka a portion of his catch found his nets inexplicably torn the next day. Each story was eerily similar. Those who helped Baba Ibuka soon faced ruin. Though the victims didn't know the cause of their misfortune, whispers began to spread. "There's something strange about him," people murmured. "Bad luck follows anyone who helps him." But no one dared confront him, dismissing the pattern as coincidence or the work of unseen forces. Baba Ibuka, meanwhile, was unmoved by the devastation he caused. Each night he returned to his mansion and performed his rituals, absorbing the fortunes of others and growing wealthier with each passing day. To him, the suffering of others was a small price to pay for the life he now enjoyed. Yet, even as his riches grew, so did the trail of misery he left behind. The townsfolk's whispers grew louder, their suspicion deepening. Baba Ibuka remained confident that his secret was safe, but the cracks in his carefully constructed facade were beginning to show. His victims were growing in number. One sunny afternoon, while Baba Ibuka sat in his usual spot under the baobab tree, a boy named Yusuf approached him. Unlike most people who avoided the beggar's gaze or hurried past, Yusuf stopped and stood directly in front of him. Baba Ibuka glanced up, expecting the boy to toss a coin or piece of bread and leave, but Yusuf did neither. Instead, he knelt down and stared at the beggar with wide, curious eyes. "Why do you sit here every day?" Yusuf asked, his tone genuinely inquisitive. Caught off guard, Baba Ibuka hesitated. No one had ever asked him such a question before. "I have no family, no food, no home," he mumbled. "This is the only way I can survive." Yusuf frowned, but didn't say anything. He rummaged through the small satchel slung over his shoulder and pulled out a neatly wrapped bundle of food. Inside were pieces of yam and a small portion of groundnut paste. "Here," Yusuf said, placing the bundle into Baba Ibuka's hands. "You need this more than I do." Baba Ibuka looked at the boy, his hollow eyes meeting Yusuf's kind and unwavering gaze. For a moment, something stirred inside him, an emotion he hadn't felt in years. "You didn't have to do this," Baba Ibuka said quietly, his voice unsteady. "It's okay," Yusuf replied with a smile. "My mama says we should always help those who need it." Without waiting for a response, Yusuf stood and walked away, leaving Baba Ibuka holding the bundle. That evening, as Baba Ibuka returned to his mansion and prepared for his nightly ritual, something unexpected happened. He placed Yusuf's food on the altar alongside the coins he had collected and began chanting, but the candles flickered erratically, and the flames suddenly went out. Confused, Baba Ibuka tried again, repeating the incantations with greater urgency. This time, the mirrors around the altar cracked, and the room fell eerily silent. The offering refused to burn, and no energy flowed to him. Yusuf's kindness was different, untainted, pure, and resistant to the dark forces Ibuka relied upon. For the first time, his ritual had failed. As he sat alone in the dim chamber, Baba Ibuka couldn't shake the memory of Yusuf's selfless smile. The boy's compassion had planted a seed of doubt in his heart, forcing him to confront the reality of his actions. He didn't know it yet, but this small encounter would mark the beginning of the end for his dark practices. Rumors about Baba Ibuka began to spread through Lokoja. People started noticing the strange misfortunes that followed acts of kindness toward the frail beggar under the baobab tree. Halima lost her tailoring business, Sani's workshop burned down, and Fatima's family fell into ruin, all within days of helping him. While many dismissed it as coincidence, one man decided to uncover the truth: Bako, a retired policeman. Bako was a man of keen observation, known for his ability to spot patterns others missed. The stories surrounding Baba Ibuka intrigued him. How could so many tragedies follow one man? He decided to find out. For several days, Bako observed Baba Ibuka from a distance. He watched as people gave him money, food, or clothes, and noticed how Ibuka rarely thanked them, merely muttering a quiet, "God bless you." Something about his demeanor felt off. Too calculated. Too cold for a man who was supposedly helpless. One evening, Bako followed Baba Ibuka as the market emptied and the streets grew quiet. What he saw shocked him. Instead of curling up in a corner for the night, Baba Ibuka rose to his full height, his limp disappearing as he walked briskly toward the outskirts of the city. Intrigued, Bako followed him through a dense forest. After nearly an hour, he reached a towering mansion hidden among the trees. Its grandeur was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the image of poverty Baba Ibuka projected during the day. Bako crouched behind a bush, watching as Ibuka entered the mansion without hesitation. Determined to uncover more, Bako crept closer and peered through one of the windows. Inside, he saw Ibuka performing a ritual. An altar was surrounded by flickering candles, mirrors, and piles of coins and food. Bako watched in disbelief as Ibuka chanted, the offerings seemingly consumed by flames without leaving ashes. It was clear. Baba Ibuka wasn't just a beggar. He was siphoning the fortunes of those who helped him, turning their kindness into his wealth. Bako returned to the village, determined to reveal the truth. Gathering the townspeople, he shared what he had seen. The crowd, furious and betrayed, armed themselves with lanterns and sticks, ready to confront Baba Ibuka. That night, as the mob marched toward the mansion, Bako knew they were about to uncover the full extent of the beggar's betrayal. Bako's revelation about Baba Ibuka sent shockwaves through Lokoja. As he recounted what he had seen, the mansion, the rituals, and the stolen fortunes, the villagers listened in stunned silence. At first, they struggled to believe that the frail, tattered beggar they pitied every day could be living a life of unimaginable luxury at their expense. But as Bako described the strange altar and the flames consuming their offerings, the pieces began to fit together. "It makes sense," Halima said, her voice trembling. "After I gave him my last naira, my business fell apart. I thought it was just bad luck. Sani nodded. I gave him a pair of sandals, and days later, my workshop burned to the ground. How could I not see it? The villagers' shock quickly turned to anger. He's been stealing from us all along, Fatima said, her voice rising with fury. We need to confront him and make him pay for what he's done. That night, a crowd of villagers, armed with lanterns and sticks, marched toward Baba Ibuka's mansion, led by Bako. The path through the forest was dark and eerie, but their determination burned bright. They would not let the beggar's betrayal go unpunished. When they reached the mansion, the sight of its grandeur reignited their anger. How could a man who claimed to have nothing live in such opulence? Bako banged on the iron gates, his voice booming. Baba Ibuka, come out. We know what you've done. Inside, Ibuka froze. He had just completed his nightly ritual when he heard the shouting. Panic gripped him as he realized his secret had been exposed. He rushed to escape through a hidden passage, but it was too late. The villagers broke down the gates and stormed inside, their fury palpable. They found Ibuka cowering in the hidden chamber. The altar still glowed faintly, and the mirrors around it reflected the villagers' angry faces. You've been stealing from us, Halima shouted. You used our kindness to destroy us. Ibuka fell to his knees, his voice trembling. I had no choice, he stammered. I was desperate. The world left me with nothing. But the villagers were unmoved. And you left us with nothing? Fatima retorted. Under their watchful eyes, Ibuka confessed to everything. The pact, the rituals, and the misfortunes he had caused. Stripped of his power, he was forced to dismantle the altar and surrender everything he had stolen. His reign of deception was over, and the villagers ensured he could never hurt them again. With his mansion stripped of its grandeur and his altar destroyed, Baba Ibuka was left with nothing. The villagers had reclaimed what they could of their stolen fortunes, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions. No longer a wealthy man hiding behind his rituals, Ibuka became a true beggar, wandering the streets of Lokoja with no possessions and no illusions. At first, the villagers wanted to cast him out entirely, but Yusuf, the boy whose kindness had disrupted Ibuka's dark practices, spoke up. If we leave him like this, we're no better than he was, Yusuf said. Let him stay and repay his debt to the community. Reluctantly, the villagers agreed. Ibuka was tasked with repairing the damage he had caused, helping Sani rebuild his workshop, working to restore Halima's tailoring business, and aiding Fatima's family in recovering from their hardships. Though he worked tirelessly, the weight of his past actions hung heavy over him. The villagers were slow to forgive, and many still avoided him, their anger and pain too fresh. But over time, as he labored to undo the harm he had caused, a few began to see his genuine remorse. Yusuf visited him often, bringing small meals and words of encouragement. You can't change the past, the boy said one day, but you can still do good now. Ibuka nodded, his voice low. I see that now. True wealth isn't what you take, it's what you give. His story became a lesson for the community, a reminder of the dangers of greed and the power of redemption. Baba Ibuka's tale shows us that even the darkest hearts can change, and that kindness, while powerful, must be given wisely. If you enjoyed this story and want more captivating tales like this, please subscribe to my channel. Your support helps us share these stories with the world. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. Let's spread the lessons and stories that inspire us all.